Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go discussion video. Alright, so today I wanted to talk about an aspect of Pokemon Go which I feel like has been a detriment to this game for a very long time, and Niantic has done very little to actually correct it. What exactly am I talking about? Well, when it comes to Pokemon Go, it feels incredibly grindy. I feel like there's nothing in this game that is actually of substance. It basically is a game where you collect Pokemon, you power up those Pokemon, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing really exciting or of value that you get out of this game from the current gameplay loop. And I really feel like because of that, a lot of players are feeling very burnt out, they feel very uninterested in the game, and even if Niantic were to release new Pokemon with new moves, there really is no reason for you to play Pokemon Go. There is just nothing but a big grind, and I feel like this is what Niantic needs to address moving forward if they want to see Pokemon Go succeed. Now let me preface by saying that there is nothing wrong with a grind. In fact, most successful games have a grindy aspect to them. And that is mainly because it keeps players engaged, it gives them a lot of different goals for them to achieve, and in general, a grind is something that can be good for Pokemon Go. But I feel like there has to be some balance. The current gameplay loop is incredibly grindy in the fact that all you're really doing is collecting Stardust, and then you're using that Stardust to power up Pokemon to use in different aspects of the game. On paper, that sounds completely fine, but I do feel like there's a lot of heavy emphasis on the grindy part of it, and there's a lot less emphasis on the rewarding part of it, because I think at this point a lot of players have some of the best counters for raid battles, some players have some of the best Pokemon for PvP, and there really is no purpose behind their grind. And then there's a lot of casual players or newer players who are just starting off in Pokemon Go, and they're getting turned off by the grind because when they're going out and catching as many Pokemon as they can, they feel like there's no purpose to it because they do not have some of the best Pokemon in their collection. So I do feel like this is something that Niantic needs to figure out. They need to make sure that Pokemon Go is in a place where it is incredibly balanced in terms of how it feels to play the game. I think this is where a lot of players feel like Niantic is completely out of touch with Pokemon Go. They feel like every single player is going to play like a supposed Singaporean grandma, where they're just interested in catching whole varieties of Pokemon, or they're going out and playing in order to power up certain Pokemon. And to a degree, I think a lot of players do fall into that in a little bit here and there, but I still feel like when it comes to the day-to-day player, they're just not really finding anything interesting about Pokemon Go. Ultimately, the gameplay has felt incredibly stale for a very long time. I really do not know how Niantic could rectify this. I think what they could do, at the very least, is have more special events that are actually worthwhile. Because when it comes to the in-game events, there really is nothing to them. There's just a bunch of different wild spawns that you typically do not see, maybe a couple of bonuses, and maybe a timed research or catch challenge that goes along with it. But there's really nothing that gets players excited. It's mostly the same stuff every single time. And Niantic has had ample opportunities and a lot of time to actually try new things to make every single in-game event actually exciting, but they haven't done so. I really feel like when it comes to Pokemon Go, whatever is going on with the design team, they're not doing their jobs. And I say that with all due respect. For what it's worth, I do think Niantic is quite talented. They're just not reaching all of their potential. And that is a major problem with Pokemon Go. I mean, let's talk about what are the things that made Pokemon Go so fun and exciting when it first launched. It was all about catching new Pokemon, right? Catching rare Pokemon in the wild. Like if you wanted a Lapras, you had to get incredibly lucky, you have to coordinate with other people. If you wanted to get enough Dratini candies to get yourself a Dragonite, it was essentially a huge grind, but in a very different way. You're going out and just hoping for the best in finding Dratini candies, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get yourself a 100% IV. There were a lot of things with Pokemon Go that was actually exciting. Getting certain Pokemon felt like an event. And we haven't had that feeling in a very long time. Even with some of the people that I talked to who are over at Pokemon Go Fest, they're saying that getting Necrozma just didn't feel as exciting as they thought it would be. And what ended up happening, and I think this is the shared experience for pretty much everyone, as soon as they got a Necrozma, all they could think about is getting themselves a 100% IV of Necrozma. So getting that first Necrozma didn't feel as special, because now it felt like they had to continue grinding out Necrozma raids. And I think this is where Niantic has kind of shot themselves in the foot, because with the design of Pokemon Go, yes, there is an element to it that does promote engagement, But that same mechanic is also causing a lot of players to feel very burnt out and feel like the game is just a huge grind, because anytime there is a meta-relevant Pokemon, it's no longer about catching that Pokemon or even getting the candies to power it up. It's mostly about getting 100% IVs. And I know I'm talking from the perspective of a min-max player or someone who is a little bit more hardcore about Pokemon Go, but I do feel like at some levels, everyone who plays Pokemon Go actually cares about these things. So I think this is something Niantic needs to readdress. They need to go back to the drawing board and think about what their gameplay loop is actually offering, and then they need to come up with something better, because as of right now, Pokemon Go is not a fun game. It just feels like every time I log into Pokemon Go, it's more of the same stuff. It makes me less and less motivated to play Pokemon Go every single day, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. So yeah, these are some of the things that I've been thinking about regarding Pokemon Go, but now let me offer up a couple of solutions, because it's not just about being negative on my channel, I also want to be very constructive. Let's go back to the IV issue. So what is something that Niantic could do to alleviate the stress of getting perfect IVs? Well, there are a lot of things that they have been doing, like with lucky trades that gives you a very high IV floor. There's a lot of things like raiding, field research tasks, hatching eggs that all have a much higher IV floor than compared to a wild caught Pokemon. But I think they need to do more. They need to come up with other avenues for us to get perfect IVs, especially when it comes to legendaries. Because something that Niantic has never acknowledged, and I really wish they did, is that the reason why IVs matter for legendaries is because of the Master League. Because of how they set up the Master League, IVs are so important. And because players are always clamoring for perfect IVs for certain Pokemon like Dialga and Ho-Oh and all of these Pokemon that are meta relevant, it's created a lot of stress, and when players are not getting those perfect IVs, that's when they feel very burnt out. So I think they need to come up with something, another method of getting perfect IVs aside from what's currently available. I think there should be some sort of mechanic that goes along the lines of lucky trades, where you do have a shot at a really high IV floor Pokemon, but you also run the risk of not getting a high IV, and it's going to be one shot for every single Pokemon. I think there's something that they could add, maybe some sort of IV re-rolling item, for example, or maybe they could have some sort of task that would actually change up your Pokemon's IVs. And whatever they can come up with, I think Pokemon Go is in need of it right now. I know when it comes to the IV debate, people like to have their hundos remain intact, and they do not want other players to get essentially free hundos. But I still think that for all those players, they need to recognize that not everyone is going to be doing thousands of raids, not everyone is going to be doing however many field research tasks or going out and shundo hunting. Some players are not going to cheat and use maps. And when it comes to getting hundos, a lot of times it's very essential. So I feel like Niantic needs to offer up different solutions in this regard. And the best way they could do that is by coming up with some ways for players to reroll their IVs, whether it be through an item or a task. And then if we were to talk about the grindy aspect of Pokemon Go, whether it be like collecting Pokemon or collecting Stardust, experience, candies, what have you, even doing a whole bunch of raids for rare candies and rare candies XL, I think Niantic needs to come up with some ways for players to feel like a lot of that stuff is actually working towards something. Like, for example, the Masterwork research that we currently have for a Master Ball, you can actually feel a sense of accomplishment when you're going through the grind, because you have to catch yourself hundreds of Pokemon from different generations. So you're doing a lot of grinding. However, doing that grind actually rewards you with something, and it's an item that is extremely powerful. I think Niantic should do more stuff like that. Maybe they could have something where you could have a monthly catching spree where people are going to engage in catch challenges, where they have to catch an exorbitant amount of Pokemon, and if they are able to do so, they'll get themselves something really cool at the end of it. I mean, this kind of goes back to my first ever Pokemon ideas video where I talked about something called Advanced Study, which is like a special kind of special research. And when you complete a bunch of these tasks, when you do a whole bunch of grinding, you will get yourself a super powerful version of a legendary Pokemon. And I thought this would have been a cool solution, and I think it's something that would be great for Pokemon Go. But Niantic doesn't necessarily have to do that. They just need to come up with something that will actually reward the grind. That's all I'm really saying, because as of right now, if you do not have any legendaries that you need to power up, if there's no reason for you to collect Stardust, then essentially there's no reason for you to actually play Pokemon Go, because aside from community days and aside from, let's say, raid hours with a very powerful Pokemon, you really do not have a reason to play Pokemon Go. There's no point to the grind. So I think a lot of players are feeling this. I myself have personally been feeling this. Every time I log into Pokemon Go, I feel like it's all the same stuff that I had to do the day before. And essentially, outside of the first catch of the day and the first Pokestop spin of the day and the first field research task of the day to keep up my streaks, aside from that, I feel no motivation to continue playing Pokemon Go, and that is mainly because the grind is doing nothing for me. So yeah, these are some of the things that I'm really hoping that Niantic thinks about, because when it comes to Pokemon Go, we need something new, we need something fresh. The game has been incredibly boring for a very long time. I think almost anyone can agree with me unless you're a very new player. I really feel like Niantic is in a place where Pokemon Go is essentially on its last life. It's on its last leg. I've been saying that for a while. I'm a big doomer when it comes to Pokemon Go, but I really believe it. I think it's a very, very critical sign that for myself and for a lot of other people, including YouTubers and content creators who are enthusiastic about this game, there really hasn't been much that Pokemon Go has been offering. And because of that, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of people start quitting this game really soon here. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Do you have a hard disagreement with everything that I'm talking about? I would really like to know your opinion, because when it comes to everything that I'm talking about, it is based on more personal experiences, and I do recognize that not everyone is going to feel the way that I feel when it comes to Pokemon Go. So if that happens to be you, definitely share your thoughts in the comments down below so that we can have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be insightful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a shout out to every single patron on my Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the absolute best way you could do so is by becoming a paid Patreon member. And if you choose to do that, you will get yourself a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So when it comes to playing Pokemon Go together through remote raids or the friendship system, if you want to interact with me, then the best way you could do so is by joining my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a different way and still interact with me in some ways, then make sure you go and follow me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and you'll see me on the platforms that you see on screen. But yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. I am Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I will catch you all later.